And treating urogenital TB is a difficult task. Diagnosing is also a difficult task, as you have already heard from the veterans of the field. And since the same problem we face when they give repeated references to us on various issues. Though in the past few years, we are seeing less number of urogenital TB cases, but still it's a significant one. And constitutes around 4% of all EPTVs, but still it has got a very important aspect because renal or urogenital TBs can cause sequelae, and male genital TB can cause infertility, and it's a major issue of tuberculosis treatment. And let us see what NDP says. Most of the slides we have in common, so I can skip many of the slides, but in general, as in treatment of any extrapulmonary TB, treatment of urogenital TB also, we have to adopt a patient first policy. That's the first thing. For example, consider each patient as a per se, a lady of coming with postmenopausal bleeding, suspecting tuberculosis. We may insist on a biopsy proof to start ATT. But when we consider a young lady coming for investigations of infertility, we may not go for a biopsy. We will stop with other things to suggest if there is something to suggest a fallopian tube problem, and we will start on a treatment of with ATT for tuberculosis. So it's all a patient tailored, and we have to consider many things, age, the other problems also to start treatment. So it's a patient first policy. And we always will try to get an early diagnosis, especially in UGTB, because the sequelae, if you late diagnosis, will lead to sequelae, or a misdiagnosis, everything is deleterious for our treatment outcome. So with every chance, we try to get an early diagnosis. And as of now, previously, because many of these cases were clinically diagnosed, we try our best to get a tissue for diagnosis, and this can address to some extent a drug resistance also, because we get a tissue and do a CB-NAT that can identify rifampicin resistance, so it can address drug resistance to some extent also. Otherwise, on retreatment and all, it is very difficult to assess the drug resistance in these patients. And as far as possible, avoid. There are lot of, because as we have heard, there are an empty number of invasive and costly tests which the patient may be forced to do. As far as possible, avoid unnecessary, invasive, and costly tests. And many of these patients, 50 to 20% of these patients, can have a concomitant pulmonary TB, and so you have to investigate for a pulmonary TB. In that case, it will be treated as a pulmonary TB case. Then finally, as an NDP or the clinicians, the pulmonologist perspective is to ensure an effective treatment, and definitely to promote the adherence, and so that the compliance to treatment is kept. So that's in general what we all aim at treatment of genitourinary tuberculosis. And definitely, as the diagnosis of urogenital TB can be microbiological or a clinical diagnosis. Most of the time it is clinically diagnosed, but it's ideal to have a bacteriologically confirmed case where you have can base the diagnosis on positive AFP, positive microscopy culture, or a validated PCR test. But in many cases where the clinician, the urologist or the gynecologist have got a high degree of suspicion, and even with the negative biological test for TB, but with the strong clinical suspicion and other evidence of UGTB, such as imaging findings, histological findings, or ancillary diagnosis, you can start treatment as clinically diagnosed case, which is still, I think, the major chunk of the TB patients. But one thing, when you write or when you discuss, when you write in the case sheet, because we have got a clinically suspected case of tuberculosis, I am starting a trial or empirical ATT. This should be definitely avoided, because this terms trial or empirical ATT, and after we start TB, anti-TB drugs, and after some time it turns out to be a malignancy, it will lead to unnecessary or litigations, legal problems. So never use the term trial or empirical. I always suggest my colleagues always go by the NDP guidelines so that we are safe. So it's either bacteriologically confirmed case or a clinically diagnosed case. Even if you have started a trial or empirical ATT on clinical grounds, and if the patient is responding to anti-TB treatment, then definitely it is a clinically diagnosed case. Don't write otherwise trial or empirical. That's something important which all of us should keep in mind. So the diagnostic expansion is just a microscopy for urine AFP. As such, urine AFP may not be very rewarding. Many times the urine may have other non-tuberculous microorganisms, and also it is very rare to find urine AFP positive. Still, in any suspicious case, sterile pyuria, you have to send for that. And ideally, you can send for culture. It's better to send for culture because of these problems with atypical mycobacteria. Always send for culture. And CBNAT, actually, CBNAT is many times we do it, but still it is not recommended because of the low sensitivity. But still, we have got the newer ones, and it is coming up. And TrueNAT, GNSPERT, and as far as possible for EPTB rather than GNSPERT Ultra will be a better option. And when you get a culture positivity, you can send for LPA and drug sensitivity. Okay. Many times we base upon HPR, histopathological reports. And you have to see that it is the report they give is consistent with tuberculosis. So any granuloma may not be tuberculosis, so we have to keep in mind this may not be tuberculosis even if it is granuloma. If you get a consistent report with epithelioid cells, giant cells, and all, then it is more likely to be tuberculosis. And as per the diagnostic algorithm of the guidelines, any presumptive UGTB patient, you try to get an appropriate specimen from the site, and if it is available, definitely it should go for CVNAT. And CVNAT, it can detect an MTB, it may not detect a tuberculosis. Then if it is detected, you can look upon for the rifampicin sensitive. If it is rifampicin sensitive, then it is a microbiologically confirmed EPTB. Then if it is rifampicin resistant, you have to repeat the CVNAT on a fresh specimen and refer to management like rifampicin resistance. If you get indeterminate, because most of the time the results may be low or indeterminate. In such cases, a repetition should be done. Even rather than repeating, the fresh sample should be collected for a liquid culture. And in the cases where there is no appropriate specimen from the site is available, then definitely with the high clinical suspicion, you have to then, in this case, you have to go for all sort of investigations to rule out an alternative diagnosis. And finally, if you do not have any alternate diagnosis, then definitely you can treat it as a clinically diagnosed TB. But definitely these patients should be kept in follow for an alternate diagnosis, which may come up later. So as Sanjeev has told, NAT in urogenetic TB, it has got a low level of evidence. Still, it should be done whenever it is possible, because it is not just identifying a correct diagnosis. It is not giving you a correct and current diagnosis. It will help to identify a drug resistance also. So another biopsy is to be sent is taken. It should be sent directly or in normal saline. You should not put it in the formalin. There's something still it is happening if you leave it to the nurse who will suddenly put it in the formalin and it won't be of any use. So you have to inform them to collect it in normal saline. So the blood or blood clots along with the biopsy specimen also may hinder the CBNAT results. So avoid blood or blood clots. If you have got a hard tissue, keep it in normal saline. It will be crushed and processed to make CBNAT. So rather than CBNAT, TrueNAT or the Ultra, CBNAT Ultra is more useful in case of biopsy specimens. Then urine CBNAT has got low sensitivity, but in our college we have got 2 or 3 attempts we had to start ATT on base of the urine CBNAT. So if it is not, so even if you get a urine CBNAT or a plain AFB on seal Nielsen staining, you should send it for culture and LPA. So coming to the treatment of urogenital tuberculosis, the NEP perspective, actually, as I told, it is to achieve TB cure, to prevent the long-term sequelae, which is common in urogenital TB, and if possible, to restore normal anatomy if it has been distorted. So it is very simple. We all know. I need not go in detail. So for like in any other EPTB, most of the EPTBs, there is no extension of the total period. You have 6 months treatment for as fixed drug combinations. The 4 drugs, rifampicin, INH, pyrazinamide, and ethambutol for the first 8 weeks, followed by rifampicin, INH, and ethambutol for the next 16 weeks. So, and this will be given according to weight bands. According to there are 5 weight bands, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 tablets will be given. Of the fixed dose tablets will be given, and they will be definitely clearly followed up with the 99 techniques, or the STS will be following, and the treatment will be correctly monitored, and the addition will be confirmed. And actually, these are the changes in the recent changes in drug sensitive TB. It's a daily regime, fixed drug combination. Ethambutol will be given throughout, and that's another problem. Most of these patients may have some renal problems, so ethambutol dose may have to be adjusted, or ethambutol may not be able to give. So there is no specific treatment group as a previously treated, whether it is new case or a previously treated, it is the same treatment given. I think I need not go for this because all of us are very clear. We have clearly know. So any presumptive TB patients that like an extrapulmonary TB, like urogenital TB, always the NAT is the central line. If the specimen is you get a specimen, go for CV NAT, and if rifampicin is sensitive, you can go for a first line treatment, but along with that, if you get a tissue or if you get some specimen, you can send it for INH resistance. If INH is resistant, you will go for H-mono or poly-resistant TB regime. In case of rifampicin resistance, you will check, you go for the shorter MDR TB regime. And if the quinolones or SLA is sensitive, continue with that. If they are resistant, you have to add newer drugs like bedaquiline and adalimumab. Actually, there is no need to extrapolate on this because all of us are in the field are very, they all very well know this thing. Only thing is that identification of MDR-TB in these patients is very difficult. We may not get samples. We may not get samples for culture. It's very difficult. So most of the time, it will be a NAT-based diagnosis. If the NAT is showing a diagnosis of low or indeterminate, always repeat it, and then if possible send for liquid culture, and then only treat them as MDR-TB. Okay. So the treatment outcome. So finally, we know only a very few of these patients have got an initial mycobacterial or bacteriological evidence of tuberculosis. So only these people can be called cure after the end of the treatment. Otherwise, we call them successfully treated if there is a clinical and radiological evidence of resolution. And otherwise, if they have completed treatment without clinical evidence of deterioration, but with no record to show complete resolution by radiological or bacteriological evidence of persisting infection by the last month of treatment, we just term it as completed treatment. So if the patient is deteriorating, has no satisfactory clinical or imaging response to treatment after 3 to 6 months, then we take them as a presumptive treatment failure patients. So the diagnosis, I will not go in detail for the diagnostic aspects, Sajid sir has already told them. So we have got diagnostic dilemmas. So always, because tuberculosis, it may be malignancy, it may be other infections. So always try to do maximum tests or try to get a biopsy and try to get the microbiological confirmation before treatment. So it is very difficult, as you all know. A biopsy may not be easy. So a patient is being sent for an infertility workup and suspecting fallopian tube tuberculosis. We may not go, so they cannot go for a biopsy. Just like that, a TB epididymitis, a biopsy may hinder or may lead to problems and may lead to infertility. So, in such cases, an SPR may not be possible in these patients. So, like that, as I have already said, you about the urine samples, the problem of false positives with the atypical mycobacteria and all. So we have the diagnostic dilemmas, and there are difficulty in getting tissue samples, which we have to sort out. So many times, these patients, as Sir has told, many times, especially the male genital TB patients and the urological patients, they will have associated renal function problems also. So you should need constant evaluation of renal function, especially even just be repeated. So initially the patient may not have any renal function abnormality. So maybe after 2 weeks or 1 month, the patient may have ureteric stenosis or ureteric stenosis due to the fibrosis, the sequelae of the treatment. So the patient may go for renal function changes at that time. So you have to keep in watch, and there should be constant evaluation of the renal function so as to intervene. Any altered renal function, they may need drug adjustments also. Most of the time, INH and rifampicin may not require, but pyrazinamide and ethambutol may require according to the creatinine clearance. And sometimes you get an acute change, acute drop in acute rise of creatinine during the treatment. You have to watch for some sequelae, the ureteric obstruction, hydronephrosis happening, and this may require a surgical intervention. So you have to watch, and you should tell your urologist friend if it is happening. So the same way, the selection of the drugs. Sometimes, most of the time, the urologist is not very happy if there is some alteration of the renal function. Why can't we stop? Why can't we drop ethambutol, or why can't we start levofloxacin instead of ethambutol, like that? So, and most of the time, even after 6 months, patient may not be completely asymptomatic, because maybe due to the sequelae of this treatment, they still ask for extension of the treatment. So both of these things are not needed, and extension of treatment as such is not supported by the NTP, because it is the 6 months treatment is usually required, and the selection of the drugs also has to be done very judiciously. So many times, especially in the previous older days, whenever there was suspecting a TB salpingitis or the female genital TB, the gynecologist usually asked whether we could give some steroids so that the tubal fibrosis can be avoided. Actually, there is no literature does not support any steroid usage in these patients. So a poor treatment outcome, and this requires, say, after 2 months, after the intensive phase, the specialist has to see the patient, and should go for a detailed evaluation. And if there is a poor treatment outcome, so first thing you have to see is whether the patient was compliant to the treatment, whether they have taken the treatment correctly in the correct dose, or any skipped drugs, skipped dosages, like that. So if the patient was correctly taking the treatment, then is it a no response or delayed response? In many of these extrapulmonary tuberculosis, the response may be little delayed. It may not occur very soon. So it may be a delayed response. Or can we wait for some day? So most of the time, after 3 months, if the patient is not improving, we get a reference. Is it MDR-TB? Because the patient is not responding to the treatment. Is it MDR-TB? So it is not time to say it is MDR-TB. More than that, it can be a sequelae of the TB. So you have to work up for any sequelae of tuberculosis which might have led to the persistence of the symptoms. Or more often, it may be an alternative diagnosis. So once more, go back. It may not be tuberculosis. It may be a malignancy. So before ruling out these two things, because it is not, you have to confirm it is not a sequelae of tuberculosis. You have to confirm it is not an alternate diagnosis. Then only you have to think of a MDR-TB and try to change the drug sample. So finally, after 2 months, even if the patient says the urinary symptoms are still persistent, if the patient says they have got general improvement in constitutional features, the patient's fever is gone, improved appetite, weight gain, and all, we take it as a reasonable response to anti-TB treatment. So the other symptoms may take some time, or you may have to see whether any sequelae of tuberculosis has happened. So that's all. The other things, I'll just brush up through these things. Most of the slides have already been shown. So the presumptive female genital TB, I will just, this diagnosis made by any one of these laparoscopic appearance, any gynecological specimen positive for AFP or CBNAT, or any gynecological specimen with the findings consistent with the FGTB like granuloma on histopathological examination. So the treatment already it is the same. Has to be assessed by the gynecologist and followed up by the gynecologist. And most of the time, especially in the previous days, we very often used to get references to the pulmonary medicine department for infertility workup from the gynecologist. So most of the time, the patient has infertility and patient has got a MANDO positivity. So they ask whether the patient can be given an empirical anti-TB treatment, or it may be due to TB simultaneous. So nowadays it is very seldom it's coming because they go on investigating further and further. Previously, and I think a lot of patients, a significant number of people with infertility in the previous days had empirical anti-TB treatment in expecting it is a cure of their infertility. And actually it is not supported. And surgery is also very rare. And even after the surgery or the surgical restoration of tuber anatomy after the course of ATT, infertility may persist. And sometimes the gynecologist asks if the infertility is persisting, can we extend the treatment or can we repeat ATT? And it is not required because giving repeated course of ATT to women may be of no use in the infertility outcome. And the male genital TB, and any patient with a scrotal pain or swelling for 2 weeks or more, not responding to a 7 to 14-day course of antibiotics, or with discharging sinus in the scrotum, they may have systemic symptoms, fever, weight loss, and night sweats suggestive of tuberculosis. And all of these people should be evaluated for coexistent urinary TB also. And you have to ask for the, definitely when taking the urine samples, it should be an early urine sample, and 4 to 5 samples has to be taken. Many times CBNAT is being sent, but the urine microscopy also has to be sent then the other investigations already suggested are discussed. And FNAC is the suggested one. Biopsy has the risk of leading to the damage of epididymis and causing further infertility problems. And it should be evaluated by the urologist and after the intensive phase. And if the lesion, if the mass lesion or if the primary lesion is seemed to be non-responding or increasing, definitely you should go for a repeat FNAC or biopsy to rule out an alternate diagnosis like a malignancy. So infertility will be a long-term problem of this male genital TB. So repeated treatment with tuberculosis drugs are not indicated. And then presumptive urinary TBs are already has told when you are giving a treatment, fluoroquinolones should be avoided as much as possible because it may hinder the further test. And I will just leave these sides. And then follow-up, among the follow-up, the one thing, if the early morning urine culture was positive at the diagnosis, it should be repeated at 8 weeks and at the end of ATT, so that we can say that tuberculosis is cured. Otherwise, repeated imaging should be done in case of poor response. This may be leading to identification of an obstruction, which may be a late complication of the healing, or it may be some other diagnosis. Okay. And surgery, urgent surgical interventions in case of ureteric obstruction to prevent renal damage, reconstructive procedures for ureteric strictures. Nephrectomy is rarely indicated except from when chronic pain, hypertension, nephrocutaneous fistula, or stone formation complicates a poorly or non-functioning kidney. And this is our status. Actually, this as for our NDP record says, the number of patients are coming down for EP, this urogenital TB. Probably there may be a good number of patients who may be going out of the NDEP, I don't know, especially the infertility people. We get a lot of references, but from the records, not much of treatments are happening. So we had 15 patients, 8 males, 7 females, from the range of 33 to 84 age groups. Out of this, male genital 4 cases and female 2 cases, and urological 9 cases. The diagnosis was based on histopathologic report for 5 patients, urine CBNAT for 3 patients. You have to see that for 3 patients out of this 15, or a significant group had a urine CBNAT positivity. So probably I think urine CBNAT has to be accepted. And the clinical diagnosis, just treated, ATT was given on clinical diagnosis for 3 patients. And this thing is to be taken seriously. 4 people were treated for BCG-induced tuberculosis. And some words about this. Actually, when looking at because it's a BCG treatment, the intravesical BCG is an accepted treatment for early stage CA bladder. And in worldwide, it is accepted. And when you're looking at the papers, even from Western literature and everywhere, BCG-induced tuberculosis, most commonly a tuberculous granulomatosis status is described, but there are case reports of extensive renal tuberculosis and disseminated miliary diseases with on patients with BCG on BCG treatment. There was the treatment about this diagnosis, everything is still questionable, but still, when the patient come with because one patient, last patient, she was improving on cancer CA bladder treatment, but came with the hematuria. Then they went for the repeat cystoscopy biopsy that showed extensive granulomas. So ATT treatment with ATT was started. And the efficacy and all, we have to be, I am not very sure, because the BCG is an M. bovis. It is a Mycobacterium bovis strain. CBNAT can be positive, but always culture should be addressed. And some centers, they may be able to identify M. bovis and M. Tuberculosis. But the other possibility is it may be a concomitant Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It may not be even a Mycobacterium bovis, because we have got still a good number of patients with TB, and these patients are already immunosuppressed. The possibility is it is a Mycobacterium TB itself. So this is something which has gained attention recently, and actually the NDP does not say much about this thing, and I think we should have some consensus on these things. So treatment, they are continuing with the same treatment sensitivity tuberculosis, the ATT for rifampicin sensitive tuberculosis. And thank you for the hearing.